So Sony just announced the a7 IV and it's a very impressive camera. And there are a few reasons why I think this is not the camera I was personally expecting. So keep on watching and I'll be talking about why. First, let's talk about some of the main features that this a7 IV has. It has a brand new 33 megapixel sensor, which is a significant jump from the a7 III. It also has a similar processor that is used on the a7S III and on the Sony a1. Right off the gate, it looks a lot like the Sony a7S III, and that means that we did get the flip out screen that was rumored to be included on this camera. It also has the same heat dissipation mechanism as in the a1 and the Sony a7S III, so we can rest assured that there will be no overheating. We also get the new menus as in the a7S III, and we can now certainly say bye to the old Sony menus. It has a shutter that closes, and it also has 5 axes of in-body image stabilization. It also has a really cool dual dial that I am really liking, but I'll be talking a little bit about that in a bit. Sony also took away the 30-minute recording limit that we used to have on the Mark III. In terms of pricing, rumors were right. The camera is at $2,499 US, which is a little bit more expensive than the a7C or a7 III, but a lot cheaper than the Sony a7S III. And there are a few reasons why, now that this camera is out, why you would consider getting this one instead of the a7S III and save that extra money to get yourself a lens instead. They packed this camera with a really impressive autofocus. It has a similar autofocus as the one on the Sony Alpha 1, and for the first time ever, it has real-time animal eye autofocus and bird autofocus in video mode. This camera also has real-time tracking that looks very good. From the sample test on that Sony announcement, it looks like the a7 IV does a really good job at tracking the subject. So needless to say, a vastly improved autofocus and tracking system that is quite on par to Sony's more expensive cameras like the a7S III and the Sony a1. In terms of a couple of new features on the Sony a7 IV, there is a focus map that allows you to view your depth of field, which would come in very handy when you're trying to focus manually on this camera. They also have a new feature called the autofocus assist, and what this means is that if you're using a compatible Sony lens and you are in autofocus, as soon as you move the focus ring on your lens, the camera will automatically switch to manual focus without you having to change that to manual focus. And as soon as you let go, the camera is going to try to autofocus back to whatever it thinks you're trying to focus on. It also has a brand new feature called focus breathing compensation, which is a very neat feature to have, especially if you're using a lens that has a lot of focus breathing. In terms of the video features, in my opinion, this is where the a7 IV I think went above and beyond of what I was expecting. I didn't think that Sony would give us so many of these features on the Sony a7 IV because the a7S III just came out about a year ago, and I thought Sony would reserve some things such as 10-bit 422 from the a7 IV to make people buy the Sony a7S III if they wanted a more video-centric camera. But I was wrong. Sony threw in 10-bit 422 on this camera internally. This camera also has 15 stops of dynamic range, which will make it easy to match this camera to other cameras like the Sony a7S III and to even some Sony cinema cameras. On the Sony a7 IV, we get up to 4K 60 frames per second, but with a small caveat. At 4K 24 or 4K 30, we get a full pixel readout without binning, and this is oversampled from 7K. At 4K 60, you get oversampling from 4.7K, and this is only available in Super 35 mode, which is at about 1.5 times crop, which could be a deal breaker for you or not. In my opinion, I think it's great that they still decided to include this on this camera, even though it would be on a crop mode. In Full HD, we get up to 120 frames per second, which was already there on the Sony a7 III. Obviously now you get a lot more data information and a lot more quality on that footage. I was hoping that Sony would give us 240 frames per second in HD, but compared to everything else that we're getting, I don't think this is a deal breaker. Along with these video features, Sony also decided to include S-Cinetone on the a7 IV. And that is amazing. They also include a bunch of creative looks, not just for photos, but also for videos. And you can go ahead and customize that as well if you want to create your own look directly in camera. If you're someone who needs to turn around projects really quickly and don't want to bother with the color grade or color correction, that is something to look at. This camera also has active stabilization, and from the footage that I saw, it looks pretty steady. This camera also supports capturing gyro data, so you're able to use Catalyst Browse to stabilize your footage. They also included the multi-interface hot shoe, so now you can mount one of Sony's microphones or audio modules without having to plug in any cables. And talking about connectivity, they included the full-size HDMI as it was rumored, and you can also now use this camera natively as a webcam without the use of Imaging Edge or other third-party apps. So there are a ton of features that were added to this camera, some from the A7 III, some from the A7S III, some from the A1, and some that are completely brand new to this A7 IV. I do like the new dual mode dial, which lets you to switch quickly between video mode and stills mode. And when you do that as well, the menus and the function buttons also switch to whatever mode you're using. And this is huge for hybrid shooters, and this is where I think this camera is mostly gearing to cater to. I think Sony did a great job in giving us a lot of features that would make this a really good photo camera, but also including a lot of features that will make it a very good video camera as well. I think this camera gives you the best things of both worlds. All in all, this is definitely a very nice surprise. I was not expecting Sony to pack so many high-end features on this camera. This is definitely more of a pro mirrorless camera at a somewhat entry-level mirrorless camera price. So that's it for today's video. Be expecting to see more from me about the A7 IV once I get my hands on it, which will be, according to my pre-order, around December 20th or 30th. But stay tuned, and if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, thank you again so much for being here. And let me know in the comments below which feature about this camera you're most excited about. So that's it for today's video. Until next time.